call to order the regular meeting of the Dayton City Council for February 26th. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, going to get a motion and a second for the agenda.
I'll make motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Sorry, I do have an added item for the consent agenda.
Oh, all right.
So we just need to add resignation of Tori Leinhardt, our associate planner.
So I will make that to K1, or what did you?
K1 is perfect, yep.
All right.
Do we need to re-accept?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did she just do this then? Something?
Yep, so it was just today. Sorry, I had a staff report and her resignation letter put out, and I didn't get it out to you in an email, and I will yet. And she just has some family medical issues,
Sure.
and she's just not able to be here.
Okay. Okay, so with that amendment to the consent, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, wait a minute.
Do you need an agenda? We need to start over?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
just, we'll go with the agenda itself.
So I'll make a
Already
motion
Second.
with the addition.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay, motion's approved 5-0. On to consent. I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I had some questions earlier, but I already reached out to Zach and got answers, so I'm good.
Anybody else?
No, I had to look at the pictures to find out that the tack trailer wasn't for like bridles and saddles and stuff.
I've seen that too, especially where it was coming from.
I had it down initially as a tack truck, so it was a surprise to me when it was a trailer.
Okay, no discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Consent is passed 5-0. Open forum. Anybody online? We're just smoking through. Okay, staff consultant council updates. Is Zach?
Zach, do you have any council updates? If you can unmute yourself.
I do not have any. Thank you very much.
He does not have any.
All right, Amy?
I do not have any updates tonight. It's just busy.
Marty?
I have a couple tonight. The Wellhouse treatment plant is still playing around with concrete out there, pouring walls and rebar. They're starting to get the suspended slab, which is going to be the lid that goes over the two basins. That's where we want to get to get the site secured. They're working on that at the moment. That should be installed over the next couple of weeks. There's still some piping going in, and then once that's all done, they're going to backfill around that. Parks, we had a neighbourhood meeting last Thursday at Sundance. At the event centre there. It was for the neighbourhood park for Braeburn and Sundance Greens. It was pretty well attended. I think there were probably about 40 people there. There was some good constructive conversation. We had the boards out so they could put on stickers on the board saying what they like, what they don't like, and making suggestions. Paul's taken the boards and all the comments back with him, and he's going to start working on the concepts revisions for that. We're going to put those in front of the Park Commission on the March 4th meeting. We're trying to get this in front of you guys as soon as possible so we can get it out to bid yet this year, so we can get it installed this year. Also need to correct an error that I made at the last meeting about the park improvements 2022 project. I say there was $253,000 left in the budget. There's an error there. I forgot to include the park equipment. It has to come out of that as well. That's in the project, but it was a separate contract. So the actual amount left over was $105,000 for that project. General staff working on fabrication projects, some welding curtains that we need to put in for an OSHA requirement, servicing vehicles. We're going to be tree trimming a bit more out there. We anticipate starting crack sealing in March, at the end of March, somewhere in there, depending on what the weather does.
Garrett?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Today I had the opportunity to go to Fire Service Day at Capitol, the opportunity to meet with Senator Hoffman, Representative McHugh, so those are good conversations today. We've successfully sold Engine 11 to the Hawkins Fire Department in Wisconsin. That transaction took place last week.
Cool.
No update.
None here.
Nothing. Just been busy.
I have a couple of things. So, as we've all heard, February 18th, Burnsville lost 2 officers along with a paramedic. Anytime a first responder is harmed, it can shake the entire community and reminds us of the respect we should have for their willingness to put themselves in harm's way. And I believe our residents follow that thinking and appreciate the protection. From what I've read, it doesn't sound like training was an issue here, but I suppose there will be a lot of investigation to find out what went wrong. But if the situation does shine light where we can get you guys more training, we should be looking at that. And I don't know, Gary, do you guys get training on tactical situations or?
Yeah, actually, we have regional response training, regional response team.
Okay.
So we take advantage of that opportunity. I've sent people last year and this year as well. And we have an opportunity here coming up with Rogers to do the same thing. We're coming up with Eugene sometime. We work with police and fire over there at that time.
Okay. All right. Other issue I had was I had a resident in Grandstrom, and I've talked to Chief Heng about this in the past. She's in Grandstrom. She wants speed limit signs on either side of the Grandstrom access points. And I don't know, she wanted me to bring it to the whole council. I don't know, Paul, if you want to say anything about that, or you want to.
So by state law, it is posted that what's posted currently is all that's needed under state law for the roadway. It's up to council to see if they want to add extra signage. Requirement by state law, it is not required to add any more signs. I mean, the people that live in Grandstrom neighborhood should know the speed limit because they come off of either South Diamond or 129th, and most people that go in the Grandstrom neighborhood live there are visitors or people that.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation would not be to add signs because it's posted as what state law recommends.
And if nothing's posted, what is the posted speed limit then?
Depends on the classification of the roadway. So residential is automatically 30, residential is 35, 40?
I think it's 40 by default, but you can lower it to 35.
Depends on the road classification as to what the speed limit is. Technically, like city streets don't have to be posted because they're already in state statute under the definition that it's automatically 30 miles an hour.
So a city street is like Pineview Lane or Hemlock
Your
or.
classification of residential
Okay.
streets. Yep.
Just trying to think how somebody would turn left down this road and understand what classification of a road it is and what the speed limit might be.
They want signs on Pineview, so they want signs as you come out of Grandstrom, right? They want a sign saying it's 40.
Oh, on
and then
Pine
the
View
other
itself.
side saying it's 40.
There's a sign on Pine View that says 40.
On the corner of South Diamond and Pine View, and on the
Yeah.
corner of 129th and Pine View. But they want one in between there. They want signage. So when people come out of their neighborhood, they can see that it's 40 miles an hour. Is what I'm gathering
Yep.
from.
I was under the impression that they wanted it in Grantstrom is where they wanted the signs. No, they want it more on Pine View is what you're saying. Okay, all right. That makes more sense to
So
me.
the concern is on speed on Pine View, not
That-
within that neighborhood?
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes.
A patrol car there every now and then will start to take care of some of it. $150 will set you back.
Anybody else have any
No.
comments?
That was you.
Any push to do anything here? I
mean,
did say that.
You do
I
it there,
bring
and you're
up.
gonna open up the whole can of worms that, that Matt was talking about. And all of a sudden, somebody's gonna want 25, and, I mean,
Well, this
it's
is the
gonna blow it
same.
all over the place.
Yeah,
This isn't changing the speed limit. This is
Yeah.
saying they don't think it's posted close enough together.
right.
I guess
Yep.
where I'm at is that you said you have to drive down that road to get to that area, right? And so I'm gonna guess majority of people that are using Grandstone Circle are residents of Grandstone Circle for the most part. I'm sure there's visitors that come, but the majority are gonna be residents there. I guess as they know the speed limit on Pine View. I mean, I don't live on Pine View. I know the speed limit on Pine View, so I don't know. I'm more concerned as to open up a can of worms of like, okay, when are we going to do this then? Whenever someone asks or not? Because it could be South Diamond next time. It could be on, Pink Street. It could be where it ends up. So I think if we're going to decide to this, we need to have some sort of criteria in place where we're going to put signs in more readily than state law requires. I think the surprising to me is how much signs cost. I think people think it's like $40, and I don't think that they're $40. So, like $400 for a sign a lot of times, and so that's the surprising piece to me. But I'm open to it. We need to have a more consistent approach, and not just whenever somebody asks.
Yeah, I'm not sure that more signs would help there, and it seems to me, I drive on that road a lot, and, it depends which way you're going, but it's a little more difficult to watch your speed when you're going down the hill, because you gotta ride the brakes a little bit if you wanna stay under 40.
Yeah, that was the first time I noticed my cruise control actually slow me down. But, yeah, okay. All right.
Where you add extra signs is like on 117th, where there's a long distance traveled between one intersection to the next.
Yeah.
Where Pine View, there isn't a whole big difference of travel space between
3-4 blocks
South
maybe.
Diamond and 129th. So my recommendation would that be to add in.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I just wanted to get an opinion there. Dave?
Nothing for me.
Matt?
No, I had some questions earlier. I talked to Zach about some good.
Okay, then we are on to council business action items 11. Drones. Do you have anybody
Who's this
presenting
one?
this?
Who's this
or-
one?
Zach.
Zach?
This is technically me, so I'll do my best to kind of give you the quick and dirty. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. This is an ordinance related to unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. We have seen an uptick in these being used within city parks, city areas. We want to make sure that residents still feel safe with those running around and having those ability to drive through basically, people's private property. So this ordinance is put in place so that the police department can do what they can as effectively as they can, be able to enforce the drone usage and that allow people to have privacy in their homes still. So I'm assuming the chief is there and able to answer any questions additional related to enforcement of this. But this was drafted by our attorney and sent to the council without any edits after the chief reviewed it. So I'll stand for any questions.
Zach, when you and I talked, you had mentioned that there were peeping Tom concerns currently. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, I had one. Not a peeping Tom, but a concern.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, one of my neighbors, this was probably 3 years ago, seeing a drone hovering outside her window.
Yeah.
And they could not find out who owned the drone, so.
One question I had is that under item E, it says the city may require the operator of any UAV to carry liability insurance for said operation, but we don't establish what that might be anywhere in the ordinance. How are we doing that?
I would assume that's just for, are you familiar with that area? Zach, was that,
I am not familiar with it, so I can't tell you that we make sure that they have to carry it, but the idea would be that if somebody's using a UAV or a drone to actually do business, that they have to carry liability insurance. I mean, the idea would be not to, I don't think we'd have a set amount for liability insurance that you'd have to do if you had a drone, but I think it's more or less if you're using it for business.
So the way it's written, it says that these terms and amounts would be set by the city council from time to time. Is that something we would be adding to the fee schedule, or? It just seems like.
I'm not familiar with the ordinance. Chief Anga, do you know of any set amounts they typically have? Is it $1 million?
I do not.
I didn't get a chance to read through the ordinance, and it was drafted by our attorney. I'm wondering if that draft didn't include, because some cities choose to license it, and sounds like it might be referring to if we choose to license them. So maybe that's language that just needs to be taken out, possibly.
Yeah, it seems like
I'm
it.
just
Wonder.
speculating.
I don't think we need to be, I don't know that.
But we
need
can
to be
double
licensing
check
it.
with her on what the intention is.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to understand how we're
Well,
going to make
we
that
could.
operational if
We could.
we're not requiring people to register their drones with us, and so how do we know if they've got insurance or not, or even what we want them to have?
Well, we could strike it and then, clarify if it's really needed. But my guess is, what Amy said is, it's part of the language, because I believe she adopted this from some other city. I don't remember what the city was, but
Yeah, you typically don't reinvent the wheel. You take
Right.
what someone has and make it work for what you're looking for. So
And
I'm
I'd be-
sure it was a section on licensing them that just didn't get removed, is my guess.
Is this kind of an area city thing? I mean, to me, I don't think the airspace above your property, I don't think you can control that.
actually,
And say the drone can't be there,
yeah, you can,
can you?
if you do, but you gotta do it.
Okay.
Above 400 feet, that's FAA territory, but, yeah, I think it might make sense to just strike
It's
it.
kind of like the Yellowstone deal where you bring out the 30-30 and knock it out of the sky.
Scott, whatever you do on your property is on your property, okay?
Paul says no.
If you get caught, you get caught.
Do you have any other concerns about it, or
No, that was the only thing that stood out to me.
you wanna table this, or you wanna strike that? And
I don't think we should table it, just over that, but I would say if we don't have any way to implement it, I think we should take it out.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think either we should license them, which sounds like this is E, which I agree with Amy, or we should just remove it. So either way is fine.
Yeah.
If we're not requiring people to register their drones with the city, how Chief Enga, how do you plan on using this then to track down troubled drones?
He doesn't.
Hopefully you can find the owner of it.
How do
But if
other,
it flies away, like it's a trouble drone and flies away, then I mean you guys aren't going to show up in time before it leaves to see you coming. If they're probably
You get the lucky opportunity that it might still be in there when you're.
And,
Okay.
and even if,
We get calls for laser pointing incidents all the time.
Mm.
FAA will call us that there's a laser pointing incident, and we'll have to go investigate it. Sometimes you catch them, sometimes you don't. It's just like any crime.
okay.
yeah, even if they're registered, unless they fall out of the sky, you're kind of stuck.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't want to merge the city. I was just trying to figure out how those two are correlated.
how this tool is utilized in that matter?
Well, Well, I'll motion that we approve it, striking E.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. We are on to item M, water trail proposal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I did a pretty extensive staff report on this. I think the key areas that I want to get across is this has been held back because of the federal funding issue there. We've been sitting on it and sitting on it. The latest expectation of those funds to be released, I heard last week, was March this year. So that's probably the fourth different prediction I've had so far. I'd like to keep this ball rolling and get ahead of that so we're ready to go when those funds are released. So if we can get the documentation and all the planning and everything done ahead of that, we'll be ready to go. Also, we've been working with DNR to try and get a joint project with them in the DNR landing in the old village. I'd like to keep looking at that option with them. I think it's a good opportunity for both of us. I think if we got a live project going on, that helps us to secure funding with them. I think that with this, it's going to have it's federal funding, so I'm anticipating that we're going to have to do a review like we're doing with the wellhead treatment plant. So that's going to have to be a consideration in here as well. So if we can get our planning done ahead of time, then we can hit the ground running and move that thing along as quickly as possible.
Is all the funding federal funding or?
We did put $250,000 of city funding. We put that aside last year, which we didn't use. I did include that in the packet as well. There's $100,000 from the National Park Service and $850 from the federal funding. So there's enough there to. We're only concentrating on LC Stevens currently, but the DNR project will piggyback onto this as well at some stage. And I don't know what the joint funding part of that is yet. We're just in very early discussions with them, but they are very keen on doing something with us there. And I think that's key for us with this water trail because you have a put-in point and a take-out point, so you do actually have a trail as such.
And that 80 would come out of the 250, or
yeah, that's what I'm thinking at
the
this
250 remainder would just sit there and wait?
Yeah, I think we would take it out of 250 and just move it along.
Where was, I seen in here that the DNR was looking at putting one on the Crow. Is that just still close to the bridge, or?
Yeah, they're going to put it, I haven't seen, they haven't got any plans yet, but they want to put it on that side because access is going to be easier from that side for a motorized boat, they think. I don't know what their thought process is. I know that you do get that huge sandbar on the existing one, and I think that's what the consideration is. They'll be moving away from that, and then they can put it out.
So it's still going to be in that area, though, in the DNR area?
Yeah, it'll still be in that same
and so they can dredge that, they can't dredge the Mississippi?
Yeah, I think that's the deal, yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's tricky to launch there anyway because of the current on the Mississippi side.
Yeah.
The 250, is that, do we get that reimbursed that out of the grant money?
That is that's our money that we put into the project. I don't think that we get it reimbursed.
That's our in-kind?
Yeah, that's kind of our part of the game.
But that we won't be spending until we...
We will spend all the federal funding first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but we're going to be spending city money to get this thing started. Because
Yeah.
there is no grant money.
No, there is no grant money
Just
currently, but that's why I wanted to use the city money to get this ball rolling.
And what happens all of a sudden if the grant disappears?
Well,
Anything's possible.
we haven't lost any money because we'd have to do the planning for some stage. We will still, want to do
Yeah,
this
but
project.
then we got a project that's started and it's not going to get finished for who knows when.
I think that we will have, what's this, $80,000 invested in this planning part of it. I think that is still, the planning part of it isn't going to go away. It's not going to be useless. If we continue to look at this project as something that we want to do, then it's still going to be there for us. I think that the National Park Service really want us to do it. I think there's enough interest from other other groups out there that we could, if the federal funding doesn't come, we'll find something somewhere else.
Zach was saying that Seagull's looking at putting one of these in too, possibly, right?
Yeah, there's some consideration of that. I haven't got down to what exactly they're planning yet, but I'm going to try and set up a meeting with those guys to say exactly what it is.
I know at their Chamber of Commerce meeting, the Otsego mayor mentioned that they were going to do one of those kayak rental deals that we've talked about a couple of times.
There's a lot. It's strange. I'm getting a lot of emails about kayak rentals from all over the country. People who want to put them in here, and it's no cost to the city, and it's all run off your mobile phone and stuff like that. So.
Princeton does it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Public Works, I think, runs it, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have a, right in their park there, they have a trailer, and they said it's been pretty successful and cheap.
I think it's easy for the city to do it, and you get a cut of the profits that they make. You get a percentage of what they do, and they maintain all the equipment as well.
You can't find anybody to cut grass, let alone rent kayaks.
Well, you don't need somebody there. That's the beauty of it. You know?
You don't?
No, it doesn't.
Actually,
It's just
yeah.
like a locker system.
Yeah.
So then you get a code for the locker once you pay.
It's like electronic scooter rentals, but for kayaks, essentially.
Yeah. And I think some of them have a bike station at one end and the kayaks at the other, so you can drop your kayak off and bike back to the other spot.
One thing that I picked up on in here, there's some description of some work at L.C. Stevens Park, and it talked about the need to do a floodplain analysis, and I just, I don't know what's been done and what hasn't been done, but it seems like there's opportunity here for duplication of work. We were doing improvements on the park and this, that we not, we share the study with ourselves, I guess, essentially, so that we're not doing it twice.
Yeah, there's been a lot of coordination between Paul Kangas, well, I shouldn't say a lot, there's been communication between Paul Kangas and MSA on this part, so they are aware of each other, and so I'm trying to avoid exactly that duplication of effort. I'm not sure if anything that Paul has given them is going to be good for what they're doing, because they're actually going out into the Mississippi a little bit, but obviously we will try and avoid any of that duplication.
Has Three Rivers indicated that they would be willing to share some of this, or at least upstream a little bit?
Upstream at Gooding, yeah. They're very interested in combining their trailhead there with what we're trying to do there. We did pull together some very high-level concepts with their input, and they were very excited about what that looked like. That would be another joint project that we could enter into with those guys.
My 2 cents is I'm just not willing to, I personally would wait for the grant money to be there before I started the project, because my fear is that it's not, that something might happen and it's gone. And then we're on the hook for the whole thing. Or we're on the hook for getting it started.
Yeah, we'll be on the hook for the 80,000,
just-
whatever.
But it hasn't been there for 50 years, and another 6 months isn't gonna hurt anything, in my opinion. That's where I am, so.
Does this timeline have to be across the summer at all, or, I guess I didn't notice what the timeline was, but.
And I don't think I've got a firm timeline in there. There is a timeline, but we've already passed through some of that initial stuff, because some of this we were hoping to do in January, so we're sliding already.
It says January 2nd to December 15th is the approximate completion date, but I'm guessing that's built.
Mm-hmm.
You're guessing that's what?
Built based upon what the fee schedule is for work.
Yeah.
Page 1 of 14 of the report, or page 82 of the packet. There's the MSA piece that says approximate start date. Yep. But that's for all the stages, right? We're only looking at the schematic design and design and development, correct?
Yeah.
So phase 1 and 2 is what we're approving tonight?
We're probably due to construction documents. I think it's 1, 2, 3, and 5 that we were looking at, and I think that comes out to 88,000.
Okay.
So we also.
And I guess I'm just, can you guys hear me? This is Rain Gardner with MSA.
Oh, okay.
Didn't know where to jump in there. Good conversation. So one of the concerns is proceeding obviously without the grant funding. And I would just state that in our experience, especially of recent, even moving forward, if the city is able to and willing, moving forward with the design process of any type of project nowadays is what the government is starting to want to see before allocating funding. So let's just say the federal funding situation delays or falls through. If you continue to work down the path of doing some of the design, what they consider it as shovel ready for a project, might look as a great option for another funding source that may come up coming through in the next year or so. I mean, there's still a lot of funding being funneled down from the federal government in what avenues, and they're looking for shovel-ready projects typically, and those are the ones that get funded first. So I'd just be thinking about that as you consider this decision to move forward or not tonight. And then the construction, so Marty and I've had a lot of conversations about the contract and how to proceed at this point, knowing where the funding still is at, and moving forward with phases 1 through 3, and then as well as we have a phase 5 for funding and agency coordination, which is really where MSA is helping answer questions from any of the government or other agencies that might be asking for additional funding assistance that, you know, we might be talking to them about, because if there are other opportunities to open up, we want to be talking to them and figure out what other avenues might open up for funding for not only this site, but maybe even Gooden or the combination of working with the DNR at the other site as well, because these are all things that we're continuing to work on in the background and assisting with, and we'd like to continue to do that over the next year, because I believe there's a lot of excitement about it. We've already had a conversation with Champlin, Ramsey. There's other communities now that you guys have set the tone of going forth and planning this water trail that the National Park Service is bolstering as well, and these other communities are wanting to come along now and look to build launches as well.
That's all well and fine. I guess no other cities have done it, so I mean, there's some big cities out there in Oka, Elk River, and they haven't done it. And I mean, if you guys want to have Dayton be the first one, go ahead. I'm not. I personally would wait for the grant money.
I think my opinion on it is, you know, we are taking some risk by doing that for sure, that things could fall apart, and we're holding a set of plans and no funding for them. But we've seen it with some of the other things we've done, the wellhead treatment and so on, that we kind of plowed ahead with planning and had a much better case to make for getting grant money when we did have those things. And I didn't know we called them shovel ready anymore, but I think I thought there was a cooler word now than that. But anyway, I do think that's real, and I think that you know, we kind of made the decision to be out front on this thing at the beginning, that nobody had done it, and we did put some money into the initial study and some of the subsequent planning. So I don't have any problem with us moving ahead with this. I'd be at a different point if we were ready to put out bids or something and still didn't have funding. But as far as the planning goes, I'm okay with that.
I'll motion move ahead with phases 1, 2, 3, and 5 as recommended per the city packet.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
More discussion? What were they waiting for to get those grants completed?
They just got to pass the funding package in Washington, D.C. It's all tied up with that at the moment.
But where'd the original number come from? Did it come from them? Or, I mean, there was an 850 in there that they decided.
We started off at 3.9 million.
Yep.
They took they gave everybody a haircut down to about 850,000, and that's where it's stuck at since then. So
my guess is they went through all the buckets.
Is the number.
Yeah. My guess is they went through all the buckets they had to fill, and that's what ended up. So.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Passes 4-1.
Thank you.
N.
Thanks, Marty.
Trail improvement engineering proposal.
Evening, Mayor and Council. To be honest, I'm not sure how familiar council is with this project or if this is the first time in front of you. But just a quick background on it. Parks Commission has been discussing trails throughout the city and labeling some as priority sections, if you will, or ones they would like to see prioritized. One of those being the connection shown on the screen, which is a connection along River Road between the existing loop that exists in Cloquet Overlook Park down to 142nd Avenue, which is the street on the opposite side of River Road from North Diamond Lake Road. And then just showing here, just a note on 142nd, that would just be a striped on-street trail, no additional pavement along that route.
So will it just be marked, or would it even be marked?
But yeah,
It would be, it was a request of Three Rivers.
Okay.
This will be part of their regional trail system, just they would like some delineation. I'm anticipating it would maybe as simple as a single white stripe.
kind of like what you got
Or
over,
possibly a
over
sign.
there.
I would expect so, that it would be on the, I'll say, west or north side.
Yeah.
What happens when you get to Rivers Bend?
There's a trail.
Yeah, there's a trail, I think it goes east as well. I know it goes south to the roadway, and then from there, and actually it shows well on this area, you can get to Rivers Bend, I think south and east are connections to the streets, and then you can travel by street, obviously, to that entire
You know, all the way to the Champlain border, pretty much.
Yeah.
About there are 2 driveways down from the Champlain border at that point, on the north side of Dayton Road.
So it would wind through that neighborhood somehow, not come back out to Pine View?
There wouldn't be any other improvements with this, right? So it would just go, there wouldn't be any crossings on River Road as well. Just
Yeah.
being the intersection as dangerous as it is, without some additional measures, potentially even full intersection control would be before a crossing might be safe and reasonable across there. So
Is there, and I lived there too, but I don't remember, but is there enough space to, so crossing right at Pineview there is, you're taking your life in your hands, but if they go up, I think it's Norwood.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's a crosswalk, a marked
Yeah,
crosswalk
one
right
on-
Yeah,
there.
there's a marked crosswalk on
Norwood.
I'm
Norwood.
just wondering
Yep.
if there's some way we could, or if we would want to even mark it roughly, but maybe not. I mean, we'd have to mark it all the way through all the way to this thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I mean, there could be signage added, I mean,
Okay.
later if, just to
Maybe
direct
later.
folks I know. I just know from experience, through Fridley, there's quite a bit of that. You kind of
Right.
dump
Okay.
out on the street and then you follow the signs to get to the next
Okay.
connection.
Even having signs at the parks where you might start, if you don't live around
Yeah.
there, that show the maps and kind of how you can get through everything.
That would be kind of nice.
Yeah.
Maybe or in our app, if our app Feasibility do that, then we won't have to print
Ooh, there you
anything.
go.
We could just say use the app and we could put it up there and then people can use the GPS, figure out where they're at and
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of options. I don't disagree with anything you said, I just think there's a lot of options we can
Yep.
utilize, some
Yep.
of which would cost very little to nothing.
Sure. So the highlighted, as you probably figured out, is a connection. Then again, that entire stretch is designated as the planned Three Rivers Regional Trail connection along that entire stretch. So it is on their system, would be utilized for their purposes as well.
And in the packet, it says that the city would pay for it now and then hopefully get reimbursed from the park district, right?
Yeah, and I have a note on this slide to exactly that. So just to run through the preliminary cost estimate, and I will admittedly, this is a very high estimate, or a high level estimate, of over $1 million. There's some challenges with this one. There's some berming, some vegetation, some potential wetlands on there that haven't been fully investigated, so we're not really sure of all of the impacts yet. But that was our initial take at what the project cost might be. The good part is we believe there is adequate right-of-way. There's I forget the distance, if it's a 7-foot or even a 17 that was acquired at some point and dedicated to the city along this entire stretch. We're hopeful and we think that would be enough space to construct the trail. So land rights would not be an additional cost or effort for the procedure as well. Funding source would be entire local funds, at least initially, through the City Trail Fund. Again, I think mentioned, plan for 2024 construction yet this year. It'd probably take place late summer, maybe even early fall. And Three Rivers as Councilmember Solonic mentioned, Three Rivers has confirmed their willingness to partner, knowing that this is on their system. They don't have this as a priority section, and it doesn't necessarily connect to any significant feature of theirs, but they know it is on the system, and although ahead of their timeline, they do see the value in it. So they said they will partner on it, and what they asked is for the city to put together a request on how much of that they would want to be reimbursed for, or what they would see as a reasonable partnership on the project. Being that the design of this is a little bit tricky, we thought maybe better to get into a little more detail and get a better feel of what the costs are with this trail before putting that request together, just so we don't put something too low together or something astronomical to which they immediately say no. So we wanted to have a little more basis behind that request. So that would be our recommendation, is to at least get into it, and as long as there's no monster surprises where the price skyrockets, then we can put that request together with Three Rivers before committing any additional dollars.
If we partner with them, do we have to, or do they have specific design requirements?
They do,
Yeah.
good point, yes, they do, and they've sent those over, they have design standards, and then again, that was the request for the on-street trail, we didn't initially have that.
I knew they had something.
So, so certain widths and thicknesses, probably what we would want to do anyway, so it shouldn't be all that different from what we'd want to do. We have done many 8-foot trails where they require a 10-foot, but for the regional trails, I think that makes sense along the roadways like this, so.
Okay.
There is some additional cost to upgrade to theirs, so that's important to note.
I guess that was my discomfort also, that they, and it sounds like maybe you've had further conversation, but the line in our packet said the specific level of contribution to be determined during the project development.
That got me right.
Well, admittedly, there has
sound like much of a
been no
commitment.
dollars discussed. There has been no, no participation level. They have just said, put together your request. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. I don't know what is reasonable for that. Again, once we get into the design, we'll be able to see just how much this is going to cost. And then, one way to evaluate is what would this have cost if it were just to city standards, and then at a minimum, they share the additional upgrades, but then they also, again, they see the benefit of this, so it could probably be a more significant ask than just the upgrades.
Isn't this part of the West Mississippi River Trail?
It exactly is. It's exactly on their system, so it would be.
Yeah, so it's
they
really
would build it if
their
we
trail.
don't.
Their trail,
Yeah.
So it seems like their level of participation ought to be 100%.
yeah.
Or
The
at least,
other area
yeah,
that
they did
concerns
the
me
study.
is we know where they are as far as when they say they want to start a project, and then all of a sudden they cut it off and say, oh, no, put a sign there, we're just gonna stop the bridge for now. And whenever we decide to, we'll put it in. So I'm not looking at putting city dollars after
Yeah,
their
this-
trail.
So, I'm not
and
advocating
hopefully
one-
get money from them.
I'm not advocating one way or the other. I do know this land is owned by the city of Dayton, not by Three Rivers, because I went and looked earlier today. And the Parks Commission wanted to do this when they thought there was $0 coming from Three Rivers Parks District. This is the $1 million is in the budget that they have. They want to use it to create connectivity to LC Stevens, where we plan on having lots of events. It's allowing us to use trail money to connect existing neighborhoods that have been around for a while. These are, not just two new neighborhoods that don't have access, say, to some of the parks and those kind of things that others might have. Also, when we do events like fireworks and those kind of things, it allows families to then bike to these events and get there without having to drive. And right now we have parking. It is a little more limited than what it will be in the future. So they put a lot of thought into why this was high on their list of places they felt trails money made a lot of sense from their perspective. So I'm just reiterating what they had talked about during the meeting, and this one was fairly unanimous, Marty, as like the number one priority they felt to help create connectivity to trails across the city. So if that matters to anyone at all.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and that's not where I'm coming from. I think it's an important trail. I think, biking along Dayton River Road is taking your life in your hands even to try to cross it. And that West Mississippi River Trail has progressed awfully slowly, except when we've done pieces of it. But I thought the understanding was that if we put the money up front, that we would be looking at pretty much total reimbursement on our cost on on that as it ultimately is their trail. So I'm just looking just to hear a stronger level of commitment, then we'll think about it, and that's kind of, seems to be where we're at right now. But we certainly should pursue it, in my view.
Yeah, I don't disagree that we should pursue it. It'd be a nice trail to have, but history says we'll get stuck with the bill.
It would certainly open up the whole neighborhood. But, yeah, I have a problem with, yeah.
There isn't anything preventing asking for 100%. I mean, that could be. They've just noted that it's not a priority because it's not on their schedule. In fact, their first response when this was first brought up was they didn't have any plans and didn't want to consider it for 5 to 10 years and then put it back on the
I think we've
table.
heard that in the past, that they,
Yeah.
that this section they
But-
hadn't planned on.
But to their credit, they actually came forward and contacted us after we had some similar but unrelated discussions with Three Rivers on other projects. They brought this up about the status, and then they revisited and said, yeah, we would like to partner because we like to see, you know, the initiative the city takes on building these, so.
What were the soil borings for?
They require those.
But,
It's
For
to,
what?
to check the material, just to see if there has to be additional base to strengthen the trail on them. We don't always use them for trails. If we have a
yeah,
pretty,
that seems odd.
if we have a pretty solid idea on it, we will usually just try to make assumptions or reasonable assumptions, but Three Rivers does have that as a requirement for their design.
Yeah, I don't know how we get more of a commitment from them, but I would have a hard time spending $100,000 on something that you might come back and say, yeah, in 5 years, let us know or something. I don't know.
So the other part, just to note, is they want to enter an agreement. In fact, they offered to enter that now, but we told them we weren't ready for a request yet.
Well,
So there would be an agreement in place with their commitment level. So it wouldn't be that we would commit money to the construction and then have them say, we changed our minds. At least there would be a contract in place that commits their involvement in
so
it.
normally when they cover these things, they also pay for, don't they normally pay for this work? Not upfront, but they end up.
Oh, for the design and
Yep.
whatnot?
Yep.
I don't, so I'm thinking of the Pine View. They had a max contribution level on that one. To be honest, I don't remember how that was determined. I don't know if that was construction only or not. It very well could have been with design as well, so you may be right on that. And again, we're not necessarily limited to our request. I mean, the request could be
It could
portion
be,
or all
you know,
of
that we
construction
spend
as well as
$100,000
design.
And it comes back at $1 million and they say, yeah, we'll do this. My concern was we spend $100,000 and they come back and say, yeah, that's kind of outside our budget limit for 5 years.
We can have to spend $64,000 though to get the design plans and specifications done, so we know what it's gonna cost, right?
Yeah, and it may even be before that. Again, if we hit some surprises, I mean, we can pump the brakes at any time. So, yeah, the commitment initially is the $64,000 for the design, and then it would be brought back in front of council before the bidding stage would be initiated, which would be the next commitment.
So this, so you're saying that we would be limited to the 64 before we got an answer from them?
Yes, and we'll work with them as soon as we're comfortable with the numbers, so it's not necessarily that the 64 has to be spent, if you will, before we get to that point.
Does that make you feel better?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just want to,
I think I'm okay with that. How big, hey, he's on. Zach, what's our trail fund sitting at right now?
Over 2.3, 2.5,
That
I
was-
think.
Yeah, it's just under $3 million, $2.8 million, I think is
Yeah,
the
I
number.
thought it was up there.
Yeah.
And they definitely showed interest.
Yeah, again, they contacted us and reached out again about the timing for the
Just
agreement. So,
don't want to get hung up to dry on stuff. But
that was all I had, so it was, I guess the action would be to approve the proposal as presented, which would authorize the design and preparation of plans.
A motion that we move forward with task 1, design plans and specifications. This stretch of trail.
I'll second.
so That is to do task one. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say no. Passes 4-1. All right. Item O.
So this is 113th Avenue that we're looking at, and just if folks are not aware, shown on the screen is a little bit of an old aerial, as you can tell by the connection to 81, but it's the industrial park that's located off of 81, now connected via Dayton Parkway, as opposed to Holly Lane, and the 113th connection is shown here. But this is the area that we're talking about and looking at. A little bit of background on this area and discussed improvements on it. There were improvements considered back in 2007. There was a feasibility study done at that time that identified the improvements along with the associated assessments that would go against the benefiting properties to fund it. There was minimal property owner support at that time, and the project was stopped at that time. It has been on the CIP for a number of years since that, and back in 2021, we did have a meeting with property owners. At that time, we had pretty good turnout. I want to say there was probably over half, maybe even over 3/4 of the properties represented. Again, a lot of hesitancy because their septics seemed to be operating fine and they didn't want the project. And the city at that time was looking at getting utilities to the north to future development. There was not urgency at that time for it, so the project was just slid out. So it went from 2020, I think it was slated for 2022 maybe, or maybe 23, and it slid out to 25, where it sits currently. So the next step to reinitiate the project would be a feasibility study.
And we met with the business owners a couple weeks ago too.
Yeah,
It's
and
not on
I-
the screen, but at your timeline, we did meet with them a couple weeks
We
ago.
did again, and I have a following slide, so I will definitely come back to that because it's an important piece of this. So this is the initial improvements at I'll say a schematic scale, if you will, through here. So I'll just point out some of the main pieces. So one of the primary objectives of the project is to get the trunk sewer, which is located on the lower right of the screen, up to the north of this area. So that's to support development on what's referred to as the DDL property, and then eventually north of 117th as well. So that needs to get that distance north to service those properties, so that's one objective. Another objective would be, of course, just getting the utilities and then the related street improvements to these properties within the industrial park, which is shown by the, I'll call it, red highlighting along the roadway, where the utilities would be extended and the road reconstructed. And then part 3, if you will, would be the cyan colored or the light blue colored roadway that extends north and then connects into the leg. It's hidden a little bit on the screen, but it connects into the open leg of the roundabout that was recently constructed opposite to the cubes. Just a note on why that's needed in the future. At some point, we expect that the existing connection to 113th will become unsafe or at least difficult, maybe even impossible to navigate once traffic levels reach a certain level and or that intersection is upgraded and there's physical barriers that are constructed to separate traffic and prevent movements in and out of there. So an alternate access will be needed at some point, so that's identified as part of these improvements. Is there any questions on the improvements themselves, or we can come back to them as well?
Is there not sewer at the cubes?
There is. They're actually served from the southwest corner, so they connect onto an 8-inch lateral that was extended across Unity Tool from Troy Lane, which that was the extent. That's as far as we could go with that one. So that's not a city trunk line. So anything east of Dayton Parkway has to be serviced by this line that, again, currently exists at the southeast corner of this business park or industrial park.
Because of sizing?
Yes, and elevation. The other one wouldn't have been big enough nor low enough to be able to extend it far enough to get to this area.
Okay.
So
Is the reason that that this proposed roadway up to the roundabout is still curved instead of, I mean, it seems like this had been discussed at one of the previous meetings, but it seemed like it made more sense for that to be like an L or a T.
There was, and that gets into a little bit bigger question. So one of the ideas floated was that connection from the roundabout to basically be extended straight east
Yep.
to service areas east of here, and then have this extension from 113th to T into that, if you will. Not necessarily ruled out. That could still be a possibility. I will say that there has been discussions, I've been part of them with DDL, and there's been quite a bit of resistance to dedicating the right-of-way necessary to extend a road east. Now, if there was reason to or benefit to extending the road east of the DDL property and continue it east, then I think we would enforce that and require it anyway. However, at that point, the only purpose of it, or the primary purpose of it, was to accept or be the alternate access for 113th. In other words, instead of cutting up north through this property, it would have been extended east, then north, then back to the west. So basically creating a horseshoe, if you will.
Yeah, I
my cursor
understand
works
that.
in here.
So they're saying they don't want it to go through their property, and we may not have a reason to go through. I'm just wondering why it doesn't come up and form a 90 at the top there so that they have access.
Oh, they would connect in on this bend. So their access would be to this. It would just, they would tee into this realigned road.
The business owners too, when they were in, I asked them about this, with their work that they're doing there and knowing that eventually 113th will be cut off at Dayton Parkway.
Yep.
Would it be better for them to have a curve like this, or would they prefer a 90-degree? They also, they'd prefer the gentle curve like this, given the size of vehicles are going down there. It would make more sense for the businesses that we currently have there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my only concern is that, I don't know what our agreement is or was with the property owner, but that ends up taking a bigger chunk of his land, so.
He has it, so yeah, just if folks aren't aware, so the property that this is showing going through, he is in process of a redevelopment application right now. So we have worked with them. There's been an appraisal done on the right of way. It is shown on his plan, so he is considering that within his redevelopment plans. So that has been communicated with them. You're right, the curve certainly takes more space and more land than it would if it were just straight and teed into it. But I guess to that point, we haven't heard resistance or a request to alter that.
That curve's probably going to shift north just a smidge anyways, right? Because with the next property, well, I guess the next property over is his too. So
It is his
matter,
as well. It is, it actually does clip the corner less than what's shown here.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a schematic, so it barely, I think it literally came out to like under 100 square feet of the property. So it almost, and that's the full right of way.
Yeah.
It almost avoids the second property.
And what kind of value is that property worth?
Um,
Clearly, if you take more property, you're gonna have to pay him more money.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to look at the appraisal. I don't know what the value assigned was, and I don't know if it's been shared with
Okay.
him either, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the,
Well, it would make sense to use it as least as possible, in my opinion, because then you're paying less.
sure, understood, yeah, to control costs on it. I guess I will point out, as Matt noted here, so the property owners on 113th definitely liked the not having to do a hard turn,
I'm sure
if you will. And just one thing, and I share this because it continues to surprise me. This is one of the busiest streets that Dayton operates. They have over 1,000 vehicles a day on a dead-end road.
On 113th?
Yeah. Yeah, consistently, I think they were almost 1,100 last time we counted, and that's consistently that way. I think the lowest I've seen is 900, so there's a lot of vehicles in and out of here, so and a lot of trucks to that point, so helping with that movement, I think is beneficial.
Well,
That's not to say we might not have other issues when we look at what DDL develops to and what that connection brings with that, but we can evaluate that when it comes. These are the objectives components. I already went through these, the trunk extensions, the services along the properties located within the area, and then the alternate access. Just to note, there will be land rights required with this. most of it, or at least that for the access, and that to the north is being coordinated with the redevelopment. So there will still be a cost with it, but we have a willing participant on that end. There would also be some easements at a minimum, potentially right away if we wanted to preserve the ability to extend a road south. I'll just point it out real quick. There has been some discussion about potentially leaving the ability to have an access to the south here. So if we wanted to preserve that, it would be a more robust easement, if you will, to allow a roadway instead of just underground utilities. But this does cross 2 additional properties, so there would be, depending on the final alignment, we expect it would still be on 2 of them. So
Do we have that easement?
that has not been secured. That hasn't even been discussed with them.
I mean, not the roadway, but the utilities.
No, there hasn't been any easement, not any easement in place at this time.
And what have they said? Have we talked to those two?
Talk to them.
We had a preliminary discussion with the property to the west, but not in any detail. Their only ask is if we could, they seemed open to it, but could push it as far east as possible, because they did wish to leave opportunity to use that property in the future. Of course, we show a potential pond right in that area as well, but
Yeah, the west property wants it pushed east.
yes.
I think he's probably wants to push west. So
Yeah, and to be honest, they'll probably, maybe not with the easements, or I'm sorry, with the utilities, but there probably will be some of a jog in here to kind of hug that wetland, if you will.
I was gonna say it.
So it probably won't end up being as straight as it's showing, especially if there's a road. I think the road easement might not even follow the trail or the utility easement, for that matter, because there's a ravine through there, there's some lowland, there's some trees, there's some topography, so we'd have to, and the survey will help us determine where that road might fit in there.
Does that 6 million number on the next slide, does that include easement for the road, or is that just
We
this?
did have some costs in there, but again, it's a pretty high level look.
How much of that estimate is just for the north-south connection that we need there? I know it's a little east-west at the bottom, but you know what I mean.
I
The
don't
main
remember
chunk.
the breakdown, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't know the components. They were pretty high level and some, just to get a starting point on it, so I don't know that, it is all included in there. The roadway as well, but I don't have the breakdown in front of me.
So then I take it we don't have any easements on the east-west chunk either.
Sorry.
On the south side.
The green lines.
We do not, as of now, but that would be with the Stensley property.
Wouldn't we kind of start there and ask the property owners to make sure we?
Yeah, that was discussed on the last for sure. I don't know if the ones prior, but with the enclave development that was there, that we were in discussions with them and they were agreeable to it. It doesn't really impact the ability, that, if you remember, that land's
Yep.
pretty tough.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I think
there
I would
wasn't
be
any
happy to sell
resistance
some
to
of
it,
that.
but
Yeah.
again, that is a step with the feasibility study, that we get a preliminary design on the utilities, and then we identify the land rights and the assessments that might go with the project or be proposed. So all comes out through that process.
So when you do the assessment, will you break this project down into different chunks? So if we decide we want to move forward, let's just say with the north-south piece, but not the red east, the red east and west section,
Right.
we'll know what that is separate?
We certainly can. We can kind of format it with different scenarios and different ways, and then do evaluations on it. And it doesn't need to be, we go all the way through and approve. It can be kind of a living document and an ongoing process if we get to a point where we start to look at things differently. Like if the red goes away, maybe the assessments go away and this becomes a much simpler project, potentially.
Because I think,
But-
as I've read through this, the north-south piece makes sense for the city, short-term and long-term. The red chunk, I think what that comes back at is really dependent upon that and what we want with this area of Dayton in the long run. Kind of depict what we as a city council are going to move forward with on that piece. So I definitely want to see them separate, because to me they could be done at the same time, but in my mind they're two separate pieces.
I very
Of the puzzle.
much agree with that, and that was
Okay.
actually the reason that I separated out, just to be thinking about it exactly that way, to those 3 components, because they can be done independently. And I think I noted that in the staff report, that you can't really do 2 without 1, but they can be done without the others being accomplished. Oops. So, yeah, preliminary cost estimates, again, a high-level look was 6 million. There would be, or we anticipate special assessments on it that would be both for the utilities and then possibly at least a portion of the street improvements as well, but we'd have to look at that with the report and see what might be manageable by property owners or being able to be demonstrated as benefit to the properties.
Where was 113th on our road study? I didn't look at it before I came today.
We actually had that one programmed because this was scheduled for 2025, so
Okay.
it's red, so it's a very low condition, and we forced it to be 25, so I guess, to be honest, I don't know where it would have came out.
Okay.
Actually, I drove that road, it's in good shape.
The first half's pretty good, yeah.
Just
There was
down by
a,
the cul-de-sac is the only bad spot on the whole road.
yeah, there was a pretty hefty Band-Aid put on in 13? No, it was after that, 15 probably.
Yeah, I think it was around 16.
Yeah, it was improved quite a bit. It's in pretty rough shape as you go east, but to be honest, most of the traffic is west of the.
And Matt mentioned that you actually had some of these businesses in to talk about this.
And I actually
Yeah.
talked with one
What's
of
the
them again.
support now to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
they probably don't want it.
I actually made a phone call to one of the residents, one of the business owners there too, and he was the most vocal one that came out. So I had some other questions for him, knowing he'd give me an actual opinion if I asked him. And in short, there's a lot of things that go into this, but the first question is, well, what's it going to cost? So they were, and when I was at the meeting, my takeaway from it, and John was there, and so were you, Jason, that their recommendations to move forward with what's being presented tonight, which is to figure out what is it actually going to cost. Because one of them said, well, if the cost is low enough, I'd love to have city sewer and water on my property right now. I get rid of the septic, I'd have more space, I could put running water. Like they'd be happy about it. But he said, if it costs me $600,000, then it's not worth it. So I need to understand what the cost is before I can tell you whether or not I want this. The red piece he was talking about, before I want the red piece or not. He was very clear. He's like, I completely get why you guys are doing the north-south piece. That makes sense to me, and it's good planning. But the east-west piece, they wanted to see costs before they really had a firm comment. I don't blame them on that. Honestly, I wouldn't have a real opinion.
right.
I mean, I probably have an opinion, but I wouldn't be able to say definitively yes or no. The other piece that was part of the conversation, which we don't have to talk about tonight, but we should be thinking about is, what do we want here long run? Because right now this is all outdoor storage, open area. It's, as they put it, it's not the most appealing thing to look at, and they know that. Like, it's not like they're ashamed of it. It just is what it is. And so, but they also know there's not many places that they can go anymore to run the kind of business the way they do. And so, one thing John had asked them, and I know this gentleman's been trying to get a hold of you, so you just should connect. You may have already done it earlier today. But if not here, then where? Is it in Dayton? Is it someplace else? If this isn't where we want them to be. But I think all of that's premature until we understand what the costs are. And once we know what the costs are, then we can decide, I think, with their input and thoughts as well as ours, as to does it make sense to move forward. That's what I took away from being at the meeting and the conversation I had with the gentleman today.
And on that token, why can't we have a preliminary conversation? You're already saying that you're somewhere in the 6 million area, so you got to come up with a number. And are these businesses going to kick in $100,000? Or are they going to kick? What's the number?
I mean, we have to have the project done anyways to get a more firm number for the north-south piece. So we might as well have them do all of it while they're out there doing it and get it done. In my opinion, like this is the next step, and we can throw numbers out there. But I think if they're going to say yes or no, I think they'd rather have a much more firm number that someone's actually gone out and looked at than just kind of a which way's the wind blowing kind of thing, based upon the feedback that I got from them.
Well, you're going to get a flat out no if it's $150,000 or something like that.
150 they may actually say yes to. Yes. The one gentleman I talked to today, but it all depends what it comes back at. I don't want to speak on his behalf. And
the part I struggle with is before we know anything, we need $100,000 so that we can talk about it. That's the part I just don't.
That's been tonight in a nutshell so far, Scott.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's really what tonight's been so far.
I understand it's simple on your guys' end to do that, but
I don't know if it's simple on their end because they're charging $100,000 for it, but I think there's a lot more work that goes into it than I think. But
it's job security.
So, without knowing that we can, so you're thinking on the south side there to get the utilities up, we would skirt that wetland But we have never talked to that property owner on the east.
Not specifically about this. I may have mentioned it I've met with them a few times on site. I have discussed the project at a high level, but probably not direct enough for them to have it in their mind.
I mean,
Things.
right now it's on the property line. You could just shift it up properties or down property, depending on who says yes.
We would actually shift it south, and the reason being
Okay.
is because they have some pretty significant screening in there that we wouldn't want to lose, especially if there's a residential use being proposed to the south.
Okay.
So we
Shift
would
to
want to,
south.
The green
the
line.
east-west
No,
line to the
I'm
south.
not talking about the green line. I'm talking about the north.
The north-south line,
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, if the guy on the east side says no,
Well, then you have two choices. You initiate eminent domain, or you kill the project, or look for an alternate route, which there actually may be an alternate route on this one. We have done some preliminary investigations. Costly and challenging, but we might actually be sitting decent with timing of landowners' desires to the east. There may be an opportunity to extend this. Now, this takes away the ability to redevelop the 113th, but if it becomes the only option to at least get the sewer to the north to allow development, there might be an opportunity to bring this, I'll call it northeast, if you will, and then bring it north and then into the DDL site through there. There has been communications made from the representative of those properties that they are looking at assembling the properties for a redevelopment. So the timing might actually be good for that.
well, wouldn't they have the same issue? Then you're still, whether it's a road or an easement, it's still not usable by them, right? Because you'd have to run it up to DDL and then back across somehow.
If it were to service
Oh, you
113th,
just
it
go
would
in
bring
the
back
cul-de-sac
in.
and then
Yeah.
not worry about it I guess you wouldn't need it on the west side, would you? Because the reason you're going up north through there is primarily DDL, right?
Well, that line serves all the way north of 117th, up quite a
Oh.
ways, about half of the distance to French
Somehow
Lake,
you'd
if I
still
remember
have to
it.
get it.
So the land drops off, so that has to all be served by a lift station and be pumped back, but the same line serves it, so everything has to be connected to this line.
So if it went up that right of way on the east side there, you'd still have to run it back across DDL's property and then up.
It just has to get north through DDL's property.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like we should be talking to,
Well, again,
Mercer
that's part of the
Homes.
report. That's part of the feasibility study is figuring out land rate needs and start those negotiations.
What is the timing, or potential timing of DDL developing that land?
It's a good question. They have their
That seems like
DD,
the main driver for
their
this.
EAW has been prepared and approved. So they have that beyond, as far as I know, they have not submitted, or I haven't even heard of them coming back with a concept. That would be the next step.
Is that land in current? I guess I didn't look at the
It is.
staging plan.
Yeah, so. Yeah, so they do have the EAW, so they have shown what they might do with the site, but they haven't initiated an actual project yet, as far as I know. I think most of this was kind of touched on. This was my personal take on the discussions when we met with the property owners, that they acknowledged that there's benefit to city sewer and water, but didn't want to pay, didn't know how much they would want to pay for that benefit. The other voiced, and if anybody at the meeting thought differently, please jump in, that they didn't really have the space to expand any of the businesses. They were kind of utilizing all the space they could at this time, and then updating or improving the site, it triggers so many city requirements that it becomes cost prohibitive to do so. So I don't want to put this out there because it's what they said directly, but it almost feels like they're maybe kind of stuck, like doing what they're doing, where they're doing it, without something significantly happening. So that was kind of my read on it. That's my personal read on it, so.
That's the word they used was stuff.
Okay.
They did, I'm 99% sure they used.
Okay, all right, so I didn't dream that. And then Matt already touched on this, is, you know, that it would be good to have kind of a vision of this, you know, do you continue to use it as it is today and just say, until they want to move, this is how it's going to be, well and septic. We'll keep putting Band-Aids on the road. Do you want to define a timeline for that? Do you want to try to promote or some large industrial use, maybe even a single user to accommodate that entire area? Do you know, want to run utilities through it and maybe chop it into quadrants, if you will, with the improvements, and allow maybe 4 or more smaller users? But those things would be good to evaluate just for kind of the vision and knowing the project. The report will help from the standpoint of, you know, can the utilities be brought through there? You know, what are some other options that we could maybe accomplish some or even all of our goals doing something different? What would the cost be associated with that? Those might help inform those decisions, or I'm not sure if it will or not, but that is our recommendation, you know, to think about those things. You know, if there's any clear indication of, you know, what the right path is, if you will, you know, we can modify the scope of the study, but otherwise we would do the study with all of what was shown as the proposed improvements, and then we can always pull back on what's actually implemented later. So again, the action would be to authorize the feasibility.
Has DGL expressed are they keeping their head down?
As far as participation?
Yeah.
No, they are aware where the utilities are, but we've also shared with them that it is slated for 25 to get it to their site. I think they're, I don't want to speak for them. I think they're aware that if the city doesn't bring the pipe, they would have to, which I think kills the project. So, at least based on the discussions I've had with them.
Well, then the discussion is to find out what percentage they would be willing to add to it before it kills the project, certainly. I mean, the other problem that you have is you don't know whether they're looking at doing anything in the next 18 months, or it could be 10 years from now.
Right.
So, I mean, the urgency to do this isn't today. I mean, we don't have a project that we're doing it for, other than just to do it.
Well, it's to allow other projects to occur.
It does let us know how much it costs, though, so that way, when it does become something we have to do, we already kind of know what it costs. So if they come in, they want to do something, that great, well, get this pipe up there, it's going to cost us X amount, we need you guys to help with that cost. It's kind of hard for them to say yes if they don't know how much they're saying yes to. So, I think having the feasibility study done to understand what the costs are going to be, and because part of this said they'll check landowners to see about rights, to understand where property rights are. I think all of this makes sense as we try to be a little more proactive and a lot less reactive to what's going on around us. And I've motioned the last two, so I'll wait for someone else to motion this one way or the other.
I would caution, though, that proactive isn't always the smart route. So sometimes proactive, you can waste a lot of money prepping. It's not necessarily always bad, but they're always good either way. What happens if we decide to I mean, right now, the whole guidance in this area is up in the air. How much does that affect any of this? Maybe that's a better question.
Well, and I mean, I'll give my read on this, how I'm viewing it. So again, on the screen, I mean, you have the area as a whole, if you will.
Yeah.
And as of now, you know, there's gas and electric and other services under the roadway, but it's a roadway for access for all practical purposes. So you kind of have a blank slate, if you will. I mean, you have a lot of existing property owners on there. But as of now, you haven't invested significant money in infrastructure to support this area. So right now, a single user could come in here realistically, take a lot of coordination and a lot of properties, but they could build a large building on here, a single user. If you bring, you know, the trunk utilities through here, which is to benefit properties to the north, that puts some limitations on what you can do here. You could still have a significant user, a single user. You know, maybe it doesn't even change it. You just orient the building and the parking to accommodate the utilities as proposed, but you are putting a limitation in there. If you extend utilities to service the properties and upgrade the road, you're putting another obstacle, if you will, or barrier in there, and now you're kind of building quadrants, if you will, of 4 smaller blank slates. So, the more in here, the more you do kind of reduce. Not that you're taking the ability away, but it's maybe some lost costs, if you will, if you're doing improvements that are to be removed to accommodate a larger development in the future. But so that part of the reason is does it make sense to have smaller individual businesses or larger businesses might be an important factor. And again, that decision becomes easier the more informed it is with the costs associated with this as well. So hard to say what the right
Well,
answer
I'm
is.
certainly
with all
not
the
looking
info.
at displacing the businesses that are there now, just because maybe someday a 1 million square foot building wants to build on that property. That conversation comes when the individual that's gonna build that building brings his checkbook. I mean, he's gotta buy them people out. But to say, here, in 20 years, this is gonna be here, you're gonna be gone, I'm not going down that avenue.
Yeah, I'm a little bit stuck. I mean, it seems like we can't have a very detailed discussion with any of the existing property owners without more information. At the same time, I'm not feeling the urgency to do anything with it because the property to the north has not brought something to us and said we're getting ready to go, so we need these utilities.
I understand that the utilities are gonna be a need someday, but we don't know what day that is.
Zach, had you mentioned this connects up to different systems somehow and creates redundancy in the city sewer and water at all? Or no? I'm thinking of a different property. Marty has a look on his face like the answer is no, so never mind. Okay, it's a different property I'm picking up. Thank you.
Jason, how, if, assuming DDL develops and then the next step is going north of 117th, how would 117th be serviced if not through this project?
It doesn't. It gets service from this.
So
Yeah.
Everything north of 117th is
Everything
dependent on
north of
this
where it exists
extension.
today, out to East French Lake Road, and north, I don't remember exactly where the boundaries are, but I'd say the southerly 2/3, I think, of French Lake, maybe farther. I don't remember how big how far north this service area goes, but it's significant. It's a,
To that lift station, or that,
yeah, that all connects to this pipe and flows to the Met Council eventually. So not extending this to DDL stops development all the way through the master plan area, or the start of the master plan area.
yeah, we haven't figured out how we're getting the parkway through there yet, so it's not too big a concern. Yeah, I don't know, this almost seems,
So one other clarification, if the DDL property is not served now, the only other industrial that's available would be west of along Territorial, is that correct? But that doesn't have sewer.
It does not. Through the sewer goes through Odessa. Is that the area you're talking?
Yes.
Yeah, goes through Odessa, but then ends. It has not been extended to Brockton. It was contemplated at one time, very expensive.
Sure. So
There is an
any-
11-acre parcel of raw land on the south side.
So any development would be hinged on whether or not Odessa redevelops.
Without an extension, yeah. And that's a costly, there's a large hill through there.
and even then, I think it only goes halfway through Augusta's property, or I mean, on the road halfway.
Yeah, it goes on their westerly access
Yeah.
where it cuts north and goes through.
Yeah, I guess
I just, personally, I don't see the urgency to get this done.
yeah, I don't think I do either. Yeah, it would be nice to have more information as far as the property owners on the south and, I don't know. And a better idea of where we were going with this area, but Where would this get funded out of?
Pavement management fund, I assume. There is potential. I don't know if, I haven't decided if I'd want to recommend this. There would be potential to use state aid dollars on it. Now, you are still negative from Pineview.
Right.
But there is, I think it's down to like
Yeah.
it's like a $14,000 balance or something. So there will be some funds in there next year to utilize towards this if
Right.
needed.
I mean,
The
but to me,
issue is
that's-
that commits it.
It's all fungible. I mean, whether we pull it out of this pile or this pile, it's,
Yeah, and I have some reservations of using state aid on this for other reasons that we can go into if that becomes necessary, but.
So it's mainly to move, or to put pipe there, so why pavement management and not sewer?
Oh, and maybe it's a combination.
It's a
I shouldn't
yeah.
have noted that. Probably it is a combination of the two based on costs. That's what we often will recommend is kind of take your main funds, if you will, and we'll do a preliminary cost estimate and kind of weight them, if you will, sewer, water, storm, street. So, yeah, it probably would be that way. I don't know if Zach is still online if he wants to clarify that, but.
Yeah, I wanted to touch base. I do want to let you know that the funding source would be multiple places. Pavement management would be a small portion, but probably mostly water, sewer, and stormwater, which we've mentioned. So. That's all I got.
Is the council's concern the dollar amount, so for the $95,000,
Not-
or is it just in principle? of
not
doing it, period?
necessarily, just seems like it's almost premature, but, I mean, obviously, if we could get the dollar amount down, then we don't, at some point you don't care, but it's still $100,000.
For me, it's about urgency. I mean, there's no reason to do it yet. I mean, we don't have anybody that wants to do anything over there. I understand the idea of getting the pipe north, but there's nothing going on.
When's that road gonna come down from the roundabout? Because if we're gonna put the
Oh.
pipe underneath there, we should probably do it before the road goes in.
Oh, for sure.
Same time.
Yeah, I would say for sure.
Yeah.
That is one thing to note. That road probably won't be necessary for quite a while.
Okay.
I don't know what that is.
I didn't know if the business owner, if that was part of his plan, is to have
No,
access
it-
off of that, so he needed that as part of it.
No,
I
it's
didn't
actually not.
discuss it.
So he will in the future, however, and we've already worked with them that he would like to install a driveway within that right of way to access 113th as it sits today until the roadway is constructed,
Okay.
which makes sense.
So none of that's pushed?
No,
Time-wise? Okay.
no. That will be dictated by how much traffic and, to be honest, how much inconvenience is caused to the existing property owners when they will want a different access. Maybe that will be sooner, but I anticipate it will take some time before the traffic levels build to a point where it's enough of an inconvenience they'll want to loop around.
That area there's a lot of flux right now too, so it just seems to me like this is a little early.
One thing, just timing that I'll just note, so if DDL were to submit today, most likely it would be for next spring construction. That's what we're talking here is the next spring construction. So starting now puts us in track with that. You're right, there's not an application in front of us today, but it could come in tomorrow, and if we haven't started this, we're late. So just something to think about that.
Well, we're not necessarily late. It's just their project's gonna be later. It's just the way it is.
And DDL has not indicated anything, right? They have not.
Not that I've heard. I haven't heard anything since the EAW was approved this a few months ago,
Yep.
maybe.
It just seems like there's so many uncertainties in this area. Bring it up.
I'm
I'll make a
stuck.
motion that we just wait on this. I mean, we can table it or whatever you want. I mean, I don't think we need to address it yet at this stage.
I have a question for the council, quick.
Yep.
Mayor, council, I have a question. More or less, is it because of the non-vision of this area, or why are we looking to table it or not do it at this moment? Because I'm just trying to figure out and understand why we're looking at not doing it.
Well, why are we
And
looking at doing it?
doesn't-
That's the same question. I mean, the only reason we're doing it is to put the pipe north.
Correct, yeah, to continue and be proactive with development of being able to have development come in and help with tax base.
When's that development?
I don't have an answer for you,
Okay,
and
yeah.
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it the reason why we're not doing it is because we lack a vision for this area, and we need to have a work session on it moving forward? It's more or less my question than anything else.
I think to me, that's part of it, knowing, what, so DDL's a big question mark. The property owners on the south, it'd be nice to have a better idea of where they're at. Because again, if the guy in the east says absolutely not, then we're kind of stuck. I mean, maybe there are other paths, but
That's part of the study, though, is getting landowner input and feedback on right away. So we're not gonna know that until we do the study, so that's a
No.
chicken or egg thing.
or we talk to them.
Or we talk to them.
Maybe we talk
It's
to
just-
the other guy.
Yeah, but every time we
pick
tell someone to see talks,
Let
show them
us
the
spend
price
100
tag.
grand
No,
just to
no,
throw.
no, I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm just pointing out that in order to get an answer to that from Stantec, we would need to,
I get the impression that before we talk to them, you gotta spend 100 grand. So, I mean, to me, I'm gonna make a phone call before I spend 100 grand. I'd rather spend 10.
Okay,
Make 5 phone calls.
so we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I'm going to second it. I feel like we need, it's certainly to our advantage to get get some of this pinned down, but I just don't feel like there's anything driving it except something out in the future. The existing landowners on 113th, they're kind of saying they'll be in if the price is right.
Right, sure, yeah.
But they're certainly not demanding it. The property to the north, there isn't a proposal to respond to, and I don't know if they're sitting on their hands waiting for us to do something, but I just don't see the urgency to it. I think that if we looked at this again in 6 months or a year, we wouldn't be handicapping ourselves in any meaningful way. So I guess I'm not in favor of it moving ahead with it now. I think tabling is the right idea.
Okay. We got a motion and a second to table it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-0 to table it.
And, Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask clarifying questions, are there certain questions that you would like staff to look into before this gets brought back in the unknown future?
I think,
Bring us something. Right now, you're bringing us nothing,
I
other than I want a pipe there.
think there's been a few things mentioned for, where we want to go with this area, I think is one. The property owner participation, would be nice to know where they're at, where DDL is at. Because it's easy for them to say, yeah, we need it now, and they don't. But they say, well, need it now, and here's what our participation's gonna be, that might be a little healthier. Although we can't necessarily request that of them, but it just seems like, if we hammered this out. Anybody else want anything else out of this?
Well, I think that, I think you had mentioned that the property owners on the south, they're not in the loop on this at all. I think that should happen. And it doesn't, as Scott said, it doesn't need to be the full feasibility study to pick up the phone and say, here's what we're thinking. See if they throw up on it, or if they're okay with the idea. I think that would be helpful to know what kind of hill we're climbing.
Okay. Item P, Wellhouse 5.
I think council is familiar with this project, so just a quick recap on the proposed system. A lot of this is not constructed, as you are probably aware. But just to show where the existing wells are in North Dayton, 1 and 3 serve the, what we call historic village area in the northwest, and then 2 and 4 serve the northeast that is serviced by city sewer and water, with well 5 shown with the circled area. Well 5 is located in the Riverwalk development. Just the background, the water treatment facility was approved. It's being constructed adjacent to well 4. Having that in place reduces the Wellhouse 5 scope because there will not be dosing or chemical feeds needed to treat the water. Instead, the raw water will be pumped over, and I'll have a graphic to show this, to the water treatment facility prior to it going into the distribution system. The production well has been drilled and tested. It's a very well, pardon the pun, performing well. At 1,400 gallons per minute, that's a success. That was even higher than 4, if I remember right. I think that's around 200. It's pretty close. I think they're within 100 or 1,200. So design of the well house was authorized in October of last year, and plans and specifications have now been completed. So just a graphic showing where well 5 is in relation to well 4, and then the light blue line there is what I refer to as the raw water line. So the water is extracted from the well and then pumped untouched or untreated over to the water treatment facility that's under construction, which it'll go through a filtration system before being distributed out to the users. The project cost estimate is we're about 1.1 to 1.4 million for the project all in. I did get an updated number on the building. I didn't have a real tight one at the time of the report. I just got it today. Unfortunately, it still ended a range, and it tightened a little bit towards the middle of that. So it's probably in the 900 to maybe even 950 range is what the revised.
Does that cost include the generator?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, site improvements are taken out on this one, but that includes everything except the site improvements. But yeah, including the generator.
What is the big chunk of that? Why is it a building like that?
Because the costs are ridiculously increasing. It's a combination of everything, but it's a lot of the electronics, the communications, the pump itself has gone way up in cost. The generator, well, we just rejected the bid for the generator at well 2 because it was over 100,000 for just that. Yeah, in fact, Marty and I were just informed of an opening. Granted, it was in Chicago today, but it was like $2 million for the building. It was a comparable to this. No, they tax more there, and things are more expensive.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, prices are just going through the roof. So that's our estimate on it as of now. The expected completion is May of 2025. The goal has been, let's get it available before the peak use of 2025. So that is the anticipated completion date, but also noting that the treatment facility is necessary for the use of well 5 because that's what provides the treatment. So it will just sit idle until the treatment facility is completed, at which time it would go online.
So essentially today it's just a capped well.
Yeah.
And this is everything that attaches to it in a
Exactly.
garage to put it in.
It'll be, a bigger pump is needed, so it has to be above ground rather than a submersible. So it'll be the pump itself and then all the electronics, the communication equipment with Marty's SCADA system and the access. And
So there's no way if we need it, there's no way we can get it. There's no bypass, there's no...
I asked this exact question and people are scratching their heads trying to figure it out. Just if there's kind of a temporary need, I asked the same question. Is there some kind of a skid or a portable treatment facility, if you will, that we could run the water through to get it into the system if needed? There was a lot of doubts from our experts, just that they'd be able to press it through the Department of Health to get it authorized to actually go out for consumption.
More work than it's worth.
But we will keep looking.
We ran into that thing a couple years ago where died and,
The good part is well 4 puts out a lot of water as well, so we anticipate it won't be an issue if we don't hit that peak season, but we are gonna certainly look into it anyway.
Yeah.
We had the same questions, so.
Jason, question. A lot of times the engineering is anywhere from 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
This one's almost 20.
Yeah,
How come?
complexity of the projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, they vary quite a bit. Like if you look at the mill and overlay, the whole, everything all in is like 6% or 8%. A lot of these specialty projects will often run 22, 25. They could even approach higher if there's land rights or other negotiations. So it varies quite a bit, but usually just the complexity of it and how many disciplines are needed. There's like 7 or 8 different professional disciplines that have to get involved in these projects. So it gets
Everybody
tough
gets
to
their
coordinate them and put all their expertise together.
You said this doesn't include landscaping, so like sod for this area or trees?
No, it does.
Oh, they said doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry, the site improvements, that's
Yeah.
the 130,000. So that's included
Okay,
in that
that
total.
is the site
So
improvements.
yeah,
Okay.
that's all the landscaping. In fact, that's
That's
the concrete pad for the
Perfect.
generator,
Yep.
but the generator's with the building. But
Okay.
yeah, and that has an irrigation system in it as well.
Okay.
it's not necessarily pertinent to this, but do we treat the water after it's been filtered or before?
The filtration is the treatment.
But I
So
mean,
we'll dose a little bit
the-
of chlorine
the
after.
chlorine,
Yeah.
afterwards or before?
After.
Oh,
So
so,
if it's
so
any
this
more than
really
they
is
put
like
the
a water shower
chlorine
that pulls
in,
out
you have to
ions.
keep it disinfected in the
Oh.
system.
Cool, okay.
This
Sorry.
this is much more clear than the last item, so I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay,
It's kind of a repeat.
okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item Q. Contract for cleaning services.
So this was brought on by city staff. Carissa and Bethany took the lead on this and met with new cleaners. I think we've been unhappy with the current cleaning done for some time. And it's just one of those, every few years you should go out, get new quotes, see what's out there.
Okay.
And so the recommendations, they like the one company with much higher referrals, who does the city of Champlin, and some other neighboring that got more positive feedback than the lowest that came in. However, both I think were an option.
So I noticed that company came in right at the budget.
The companies didn't know the budget unless
I,
they looked it up. But, I mean, it wasn't something that was shared.
okay, so it just, okay.
Only if they went and did the studies and did some homework, I mean, they could look it up.
That is possible, yeah.
The other one's over budget.
Well,
So one thing to keep
the
in mind
third
as well
one-
is currently we order all of our paper supplies, and the cleaning company simply just tells me when we're low on supplies, so then we reorder. These contracts would include that, so, and that comes out of a different bucket of money, so
Yeah.
that would
Yeah, it's
cut down
not a
on
big chunk
some,
of money.
not huge, but
Yeah.
some.
So it seemed like that third one, that was lowest by quite a bit. And League of Minnesota's, League of, LMC,
LMC, yeah.
they used them. So was it, why did we choose the middle one?
They had much higher recommendations from current people who are using them, like the city of Champlin. More direct contact that we could make with the references that they gave.
Okay.
The number of years that they have less turnover in specifically cities that they were servicing.
Yeah, the difference is about $500 a month, roughly.
Sure.
Anybody else have any
I don't care either.
comments?
Yeah, I was curious too, why not the low bid, but I don't
Yeah, it
think
was
the
just
low
a
bid is always the
much
best value
stronger
anyway.
argument made, I guess, from the reference points, but.
Okay.
I'm okay with the recommendation, so I'll make a motion to approve the preferred vendor.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. On to item R.
So discussion on special assessment policy. Zach, are you gonna jump on here?
Yeah, if I could jump on this one, Mayor and Council, this is coming up just in relation to some conversations that I've had with different council members about special assessments and how we handle them. We have this special assessment policy, which you are seeing and you saw in your packet. This was adopted in 2009, and it hasn't much been visited since then. We haven't had a lot of projects related to special assessments, and it also just hasn't. We've had a lot of staff turnover, so it wasn't really well vetted. So what we need to know is just a general discussion of what the council would like to see for special assessments moving forward. If you'd like to do them for projects, we need to make sure we have a policy that we have in place for those. Staff does not have a recommendation of yes or no on whatever you want to do with special assessments, but it is a council decision. So I'll stand for any questions, any discussion.
Zach, when we were talking, did you say we don't assess for mill and overlay?
That is correct. Based on the special assessment policy, we would only do it for road reconstructs.
Okay, thank you.
The last time I think this was used was 2012 when South Diamond was done. I know everybody on South Diamond got assessed about 50, if I remember right, $5,200, something like that. For the size of the project, trivial money, but I personally think the road work comes out of property taxes. That's what property taxes are for. But I understand that our roadway expenditures are going to get costly. So are you always going to have a $2 million pavement management plan annually?
I think, so it sounds like some of the municipalities around us do things, everybody does things their own way, but I have a hard time assessing larger roads when 90% of the traffic isn't,
Not even from here.
let alone Dayton, local, let alone Dayton, but some of these houses or some of these developments, so I think it makes sense. Because, for example, Oakview, right, nobody uses that road except locals. All of the developments have a lot of roads in them, and the only people using those roads are locals, unless somebody's, trying to cut through somehow, but, so I can see some of that, and I wouldn't just do rebuilds, I'd probably bump it up to mill and overlays too. That obviously would be much smaller, but I think the bigger question is how much, because I know nobody's gonna sit and figure out what the benefit is. I would be surprised if there was anybody you could say what the benefit is with a straight face, but there's some benefit. And everybody now is paying a franchise fee that's going into pavement. Rogers uses that for their road repair. I don't know how the numbers work out, but I know their franchise fee is smaller than ours, and ours pulls in 500. I'm guessing theirs probably pulls in, I don't know. Zach, do you have any idea? 1.2, 1.3 million, something? Right.
For Rogers or for us?
Rogers.
I have no clue. I could probably ask and get that number, but I don't have it up.
I would be surprised if it covers all of it, but Champlin, it sounds like their last one of the council members, the last he remembered was a mill and overlay. They would assess everything house is $2K for that. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions, and I had a hard time going through this whole thing. It is not very user-friendly to read. I don't even know what to say about utilities. But the road made more sense to me, road pavement costs, but, so I could see, some costs being assessed locally, even a local collector. I wouldn't do anything on arterial roads or even the larger collectors, but just because, like I said, the traffic there is almost all non-local and or not even city traffic, but I mean, the city still gets hit with it because it's a city road. But, so I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know where we go with this. I would like to see a little bit more of a understanding of what, so there were some breakdowns in there as far as percentages go, but I didn't understand that because, I don't know if the intent was to take a look at the project cost and distribute 50% of it to the local houses. Again, it gets down to, I don't know how you could even do that in some of these areas.
Oh, yeah, on that Oakview project, you'd be
Yeah,
assessing.
you wouldn't have got,
God, you'd be assessing
well,
$70,000-$80,000.
you'd be in court, that's what, so.
Well, even Zanzibar, I mean, we didn't do anything with that.
Right.
And
And there-
what do we
there's
got,
only
four
three
properties on that
yeah.
stretch
Yeah,
of road?
maybe 4.
Well, and ag you can't even assess, really, so, yeah, so I don't know,
You know, that's where I got lost on it too, is around the pavement stuff. I mean, it seems like, you know, the conversation we just had around adding sewer and water into an area, that there's, you know, there's a benefit to the future development, and in cases to the existing property owners, it probably in some measure improves their property value. But when it came to roads, at least in my time here, we've not been doing that. You know, the developer builds the roads, or we do what we need to do to repave them, and we've just been using pavement management money for that. And the franchise fee was sold on the notion that that's what that was going to be, and everybody pays in. I like that approach better, and particularly the way the city is. In a lot of places, some roads will never get done because there aren't enough people to spread that cost over. So, you know, what's ultimately fair, in my mind, is that we are all throwing in, and we have a obligation as a city to have decent roads, and this is what it's going to cost us ongoing. And we had that discussion at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to make this one work. I tried to think through some scenarios on this too, and I kept getting lost in the language.
I've lived in a few different cities. I've always been assessed when the roads come through. I'm impartial, candidly, whether we decide we want to assess. I care with how we assess it, but impartial whether we decide we want to assess or not assess. My biggest piece is we need to be consistent. Meaning either we always assess by the guidelines, not saying these guidelines, but by guidelines we all agree to, or we all agree we're not going to assess, and everyone pays into taxes, and tax money pays for streets, and everyone pays, and then everyone's road gets redone over time, and I'm okay with that too. So I'm impartial on which of do we assess or don't we assess options. If we go with we do assess, we may need a work session to understand kind of how we want to go about doing that, and maybe that's the question tonight is, do we want to agree to not assess or assess? And again, I'm impartial on that. Because I said every city I've ever lived in, it's normal. And I've had, unfortunately, almost every city I lived in, the house in my street's been redone while I've lived there. So, you know, I've been stuck or saddled with those assessments, and sometimes they're a couple grand, and sometimes they're, you know, we're redoing the sewer and water and the road, it's a lot more expensive. And so and candidly, didn't really affect me that much. It went on my taxes, and it went off to the next person that bought the house. So, you know, it is what it is, and you know that's the way that city did it. So I'm impartial to which assess or not assess. I think we just need to agree on what we want to do going forward, and we have a lot of residents that have been on the paying taxes in for a while that were under the assumption that they weren't going to get assessed. I think when their roads were redone, maybe. And
I think the sewer and water is a totally different issue than mill and overlay. It's a totally different issue.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
And I think to me, I think we know now that this pavement management is going to probably be 1.5 forever, and if not 2. I mean, it's going to keep probably growing as the city gets bigger.
It's going to have to, because the city grows, we have more roads, so we got to grow the number if we want to keep the road heading in the right direction. So when we get new taxes, we gotta use some of that for the roads, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
it
part of
should, but I mean, once we get that 70 down to 50, assuming we don't grow, which is a big assumption,
Yeah, but you're
then
always
it could
gonna-
come down, but,
The
yeah.
fair roads today are gonna be poor in 5, 6
No,
years.
but that's the
Yeah.
goal, right, is once you get it to 50, you shouldn't need that acceleration anymore.
Yeah.
It's just, you do need it to backfill or for some of the new
Catch
homes,
up.
but, I don't know,
So do you want
it's frustrating to me, though, that local development roads, the whole city pays for. It's not that big of a frustration. It just seems like some of those costs almost need to be localized, but I don't know. I
One way
guess.
to
Yeah, but it's also hard to say, because like, we very rarely use Pine View. I use Pine View to come here and that's it. So why would I want
No.
my tax to a Pine View when I don't ever use Pine View? Heck, I very rarely leave my home. Honestly, coming here is probably the most I leave my home to go anywhere that I don't walk to anyways.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is, so I, for example, I'll use this again, Oakview. I wonder, that road was in tough shape, but maybe it's a bad example, but there will be some pushback then from local residents as in, if they really don't believe their road needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. To me, there's a lot of pros and cons. I don't like the franchise fee. I'd rather have that more localized, but, I don't know.
Is your ask to go over the special assessment policy and change language in it? Maybe that'd be better done in a work session. if
well,
we
I
get-
think the first question is, do we want the assessment or not? There's no reason to
Yeah.
have the workshop if a majority of councils that we don't want to do assessments.
Gotcha.
Because then we don't need to spend the time on it if if a majority of us feel that we don't need assessments.
I'm not a fan of assessment. I'm just not.
Not either.
That's what you're paying property taxes for. It's up to the city to manage the money enough to
Figure out
pay
a
the bill.
plan. Pitch it.
Now, as far as some of the wear and tear on the roads, I think we could do a couple things different there. Rather than having 5 or 6 garbage companies in the city, we could have 2. Or 1.
Let's start that battle again.
He did. Just right now, you heard it.
Well, we have a policy, we just didn't know we did.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
right. So we didn't
you
throw
know,
the
our-
policy out, or we do.
Well,
right, so
that-
I think that it needs work. I think that some of this road stuff should go away. And I don't know I don't know that we've got another option besides on some of the sewer and water, storm sewer stuff, when we're talking about those kind of extensions. Then I think that there's a benefit to the future developments and so on that it seems fair to assess that cost, because it doesn't exist if we don't do it. And so I think parts of this we still need, but I'm struggling a lot with the street stuff.
I'm with you. I think for the cities, the sewer and water, if we have to go on there, fix it or replace pipe, we're gonna have to do it, probably gonna have to assess for it at some point in time. But I think just to redo streets, I have a hard time assessing.
Yeah, the pipe, we should be good for a while, but
So I go
I know,
back,
we just saw the road quality the builders are putting in. I don't know where the pipe is either now.
so I go back to my original question. Is it something that we want to set something up in the future for, or to discuss what the policy looks like? Because roads is one thing, but, obviously there's other things that we're not picking up right now, so.
I'd rather let staff, we tell staff as a majority, we don't want roads assessed when roads are being redone, but other things may need to be assessed, come back to us with a different version of this.
Sure.
I'd rather have them take a first stab at it, and then we can take a look, then either decide we want a work session, or we're good with what staff comes up with. That'd be my 2 cents on it.
I'm okay with that.
We pay these guys lots of money, I'd rather give them a shot at it before we just, think we know more than people that do it all day long every day.
we would need to come up with recommendations then, but, and you're just saying toss the whole assessment out.
Yep. Other than
mean,
sewer and water. I mean, you put in
Yeah,
sewer and water.
parts
in
of
the
it
streets,
you
that's
would
a totally
throw. Yeah,
different
parts
deal.
of it you would throw, and I think that's
As
going
far
back
as
to
mill
what
and
we're talking
overlays,
about.
no. Now, if all of a sudden a street, if you go back to Oakview, then part of that is it's the city's fault that the road got in such bad shape. I mean, we just let it go. Part of that, and I certainly think, I feel over the last 4 or 5 years or so, maintenance has been better.
Oh, yeah.
Because years ago, there wasn't any.
Well, I also feel like if we're going to move forward with, you know, the scanning of a different way of grading our roads, that it should be implemented into policy as well. That's one of the layers that you look at when you go to either A, assess or B, not assess.
As far as that last road study, I'm just a dumb elk farmer. I can tell you.
But that's what I'm just saying, is like, you get your eyes on it, and then, oh, we do have a policy. It's weird to me that we're like, hey, we haven't put eyes on this since 2009. I'm like, well, criminy.
So it sounds like we agree we need something, but
Mm-hmm.
this needs work.
Yeah.
So what's the best approach?
Right.
A work session, or have staff come back with a revised version of it based on our musings here?
What would our musings be, though?
Yeah, so
I
what,
think
what are we going to
I
leave?
think the latter is fine, but what would our musings be? And it sounds like you want to chuck road assessments at least.
They're gone. Yeah.
And
As far
I
as-
agree with Scott.
As far as I'm concerned, you're just gonna have the pavement amendment, everybody's gonna pay everything. This piece is gonna go to this street this year, you know, that's just the way it is.
I agree with Scott.
In 3 years,
Okay.
somebody else gets their
Third on
street
that
done.
one too, so.
I agree with that,
Mhm.
that the road pieces of it, we just chucked, that
Okay.
we're handling that a different way. I also, if we're gonna look at a revised version of this, I found this thing very confusing to read in terms of how you ever get to a number.
Start
on
new
what
versus
the-
revised, is that what you're saying?
So
I think
you
they
know,
need
is
to
there
put
a way
eyes
to-
on it, and then
to put some of this in plain English so that, you know, us regular people can figure it out.
That's Commonwealth.
How'd that sound, Zach?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. So what I got is just special assessments for roads are gone. Not interested in those things. Special assessments for utilities are good to go, or want to have a revised shot at it. I'll take a look and make sure the policy is actually legible and readable, and you can actually understand it if you're going to do something. I know there are a few different ways of assessing, and that's kind of like that second half of the special assessment policy. So I don't know if we want to discuss that at all, or if you want to, and that's the land use or linear foot or
geez, yes.
number of homes or something that's on that roadway. That's one other
Yeah,
question that I have ready for direction.
Well, I think this will be a work session, because do one,
Yeah,
and
but
we're
you know
gonna
what, you
assess
still,
to the other.
it seems like every area is unique, because if you go with area, now your keyboard people are like, what are you doing to me? And that downtown, they went by square footage, and that was, I don't know, I just thought that was very odd too, but I don't know the answer to that one, and I don't know how we get to an answer. It almost seems
And I'll
like.
push it further and say linear feet stuff, because like you look at my property and most of my linear feet's past my driveway, I never drive past it, right? So like if you're looking at all three of them equally, it all depends how you look
Yeah.
at it.
That one's hard, because I almost think it almost needs to be a per area thing, and I don't know how you do that.
I think
Is there a way
you
just
should
to
visit with some other cities and find out what they're doing on the utility side of it.
So is there a way to just say how many streets, how many homes are on the street, we're redoing the street, we just divide it up, whatever the assessment's gonna be equally amongst all the homes on the street? Just units, I'll say units of homes
There you
maybe,
go.
but units.
Yeah, except if you're here and you've got, say, a quarter acre, and this guy here's got 5 acres or whatever, some big number, you're gonna squawk. And I know that's
His
some of
cost
what
is the same,
downtown
yeah,
is, and it isn't necessarily,
Do we see a lot of that in the same street? I feel like our
Well, we
streets are, right now, at least to the point, we don't have a lot
I
of
think it's
that.
mostly downtown. We have some areas down there that were considered half a lot, and some were, my dad's was 1 3/4 lots. I'm like, how's that work? You got assessed 1 3. Anyways, it's just not as easy as it sounds.
Oh, you mean, sorry, you said downtown, I was thinking downtown Minneapolis, you're talking
No.
about the historic village, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I've kind of,
Our downtown.
our downtown, I was like,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Marty, do you remember when they did the old village? Actually, for that matter, also some of these older areas, or Donnie and Dale's, how did they do that by area? Do you remember?
Jeez, I don't remember.
That one might be a little safer, because most of the lots are.
I don't know, was there assessments done in the village?
I don't believe
Yeah.
There was deed funding. Was there assessments?
Oh, yeah. But I think there was assessments that, I know there were assessments done on. the
Typically, so the other part about assessments to keep in mind is you have to show that you're treating properties fairly.
Yeah, but.
So
yep.
you have to be able to demonstrate that. Usually the sewer can be done on a per unit basis, assuming they are and will continue to be the same use, so one single
Yeah, that
family
probably
per.
makes sense, yeah.
And then a lot of times it will be, okay, that lot is able to be split. If you want a second service on there, they would charge a half credit.
Yeah.
That was commonly done, at least. I think that, now that I think of it, I think that might have been done in the
And I
village
know,
as well.
So like I said, some of the lots downtown ended up going to court, and I know at least a couple of those we lost. The city lost because I think there was the same thing. How did I get charged for 1.5 units? But it's just messy, and I don't know how you fix that. Because no matter how you do it, somebody else is going to say,
Yeah.
it sucks.
Can't appease everyone.
Yeah.
You get them all.
And as long, yeah.
So maybe we ask Amy then too, next time, Amy Schmidt, next time she's in, if there's certain ways that are more legally defendable than others, so we should stay away from X, Y, and Z and
Using
move
this
towards A
language or
and B.
something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Puts us in a spot.
She might be a good input for that piece of it.
So I think that was the big I don't know, Zach.
Yep, I'll take a look at it and see. Like I said, I can look at a couple other communities around us and see how do they do it, and come back with some recommendations. But it'll be on a future meeting, probably second meeting in March. So, thank you very much.
Are we done with that item then?
I got the direction I needed at least at this point. So,
Okay.
so I think it's less assessments, which is easier for staff, which is good.
Time to go back an hour.
Yeah.
What's that?
Time to
Back
go
in
back
time.
an hour.
Remember, back to here, right here. 7:40 now. Now it's 9 now. Go back to 7:40.
How'd you do that?
It's magic.
Okay, so if there's no objections, we will be adjourned.
Done.
We are adjourned.
All right, you're.